Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Dr. Soul Brother at you again for the with remedies to cure your ills. I'm not going to keep you long, but at the same time, I must get into this. I didn't plan to do a program right now. It was going to be later. I'll still do one later, but I felt compelled over what happened uh, on August 5th to address. That's that Montgomery Brawl. And it's clear that those brothers and sisters who got involved in that Montgomery Brawl said loud and clear, don't mess with us. Dr. Soul Brother cannot begin to tell you how warm my heart is to see my people, our people, stand shoulder to shoulder with each other over that situation that happened. And you sent the message loud and clear. We're not the ones to be messed with. I want to talk about the importance of our people standing shoulder to shoulder with each other. That's what we do. That's what we're supposed to do. This is what family does. Okay? That's what family does. You stand shoulder to shoulder. And it was loud and clear that the brother who was only doing his job, um, the cavalry came and came to his aid. Now, um, it's important for us to keep this momentum going, not just get caught up in the moment and then when things die down, it's back to business as usual. No, that should never be. Never, ever. But what I will say to you is this at the same time, I cannot stress enough how proud I am to see what our people can do when we unify with each other. It was clear, anybody looking at the film footage, that the white fella who called himself confronting uh, this brother who was only doing his job because, as you saw, um, that boat was in the way. And he told them to move it, and they chose not to because it's clear, even though you couldn't hear what was being said, you could read the body language, and it was crystal clear to me that, oh, I'm not trying to take orders from this black man over here. So when he took things into his own hand, and by the way, it's clear that you left him no other alternative but to do what he did, and that's when the cowards, the punks, the chumps with no spine, no guts, and no cojones at all decided to call themselves confronting him. And by the way, I'm not lost on the fact that the rest of those white boys who uh, came at him had nothing to do with that boat that he moved out the way. They just decided to back one of their own white brethren. At any rate, they came along and tried to rat pack him. No, no, I'm sorry, not tried. They did rat pack him. That's what cowards do. That's what cowardly white boys do. They did the same thing in the UK, in England, with what's it called, the Teddy Boys. When black folk were moving there during the Windrush era, our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean going there, and you had the Teddy Boys coming at the black men. Boys, Teddy boys, plural, not one. They don't fight one on one. They try to rat pack you. And then when they get confronted with others coming towards them, and they punk out like the cowards that they are. Anyway, this is what we saw happening there in Montgomery. And one of the things that's real significant about this situation is this. I want to talk about um, and compare what happened in New York. New York, what happened with that one black man who had some mental health issues to be sure. And he was hemmed up by a former, I think it was a former Marine. He served in the military. But the point is, uh, he was not a law enforcement officer. He was a private citizen. And he had uh, Jordan Neely, I think was his name, had him in he was chokehold, and he killed him. There were other black folk there on that subway, and nobody did anything. Now you look at that situation compared to what happened on August 5th with the um with the dealing with the riverboat situation. Now, folk like to talk about how New York this, and I'm not trying to engage in um set tripping or nothing like that. But the point is this: that situation that happened was in the north with Jordan Neely on the subway. Most people who live in New York are not Southerners. A lot of my native New Yorkers with roots here in America, and of course, there's a large percent of New Yorkers who have island roots from the Caribbean. And it's interesting to me, and should be instructive at the same time, that you had our brothers and sisters, many of whom, most of whom, in Montgomery, Alabama, have roots in America, and they handled business. They got busy, which debunks this whole notion that folks from the South just hang their heads, just take stuff from white folks and all that kind of stuff. And we're not saying that you don't have that, but at the same time, you had those who did. But the difference between yesteryear and today is this. Let's be clear. And any of the folk who were there and who participated in this, who are listening in the clouds, I want you to hear me and hear me clearly. Any of you brothers and sisters who were involved, or even if you were an eyewitness to what happened on August 5th, there, the riverboat, just know and understand this. You were able to do what you did freely because of those who were involved in the civil rights movement and other parts of black liberation who paved the way and knocked down barriers so that you could not hold your head down, not look a white person in the eye, always saying yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, in a subservient way. They broke down those barriers for you. And let's be clear, you had black folk who, if they did retaliate against a white person, they had to flee. They had to bounce. They had to get out of Dodge because it was unsafe. Well, in this situation, fortunately, nobody was uh, killed. Nobody lost their lives. Because that would have become a whole nother episode had that happened. But the point is that your parents, grandparents, great grandparents, in some cases, paved the way for you to have a bit more freedoms than they had during their lifetimes. So clearly, just as my heart is warmed by what I saw, you have made your foreparents proud. You made them proud. And for that, you need to hold your head up and stand tall and keep on swinging. Now, let me move on. Um, we need to be clear about something. A couple of things. Um, that site where the riverboat is, um, that's downtown Montgomery. Now, I've been to Alabama before. In fact, I was just there about 14 years ago. I was in Anniston, Alabama, and that's a very interesting uh, part of the country and has a lot of rich history. If you know anything about Anniston, Alabama, you know this is where the what do they call the in 1961. This is during the early stages of the civil rights movement. You had the Freedom Riders, Freedom Rides that took place with the people who call themselves Freedom Riders, John Lewis and all the others. And by the way, John Lewis is from Troy, Alabama. Okay, from Troy. Um, Reverend Ralph Abernathy from Linden, Alabama. Linden, Linden, Alabama. And there are quite a few other people who have a connection in Alabama. Mrs. Catherine Jackson is from Barber County, Alabama. That's the Jacksons, the famous Jacksons, Michael Jackson and his brothers out of Gary, Indiana. Their mother, is from Alabama. But let me move on here. Um, Downtown Montgomery, where the riverboat, that site there. Um, don't know how many people are aware of this, but that used to be the site of the domestic slave trade in Alabama, in that part there. Enslaved people were transported on the Alabama River, unloaded at the dock on Commerce Street. So, isn't it ironic that the very site where our people were enslaved and were transported at that Alabama River, the descendants, let me repeat that, the descendants took care of business with those who are the descendants of those who were the enslavers. Just think about that for a moment. The descendants of enslaved Africans threw down against the descendants of the enslavers. That's what we witnessed. That's what we witnessed. And I'm telling you right now, it was whole heartwarming. I was enjoying every second of this because it's clear we had a saying when I was growing up: don't start none, won't be none. And had they left that man alone, none of that would have jumped off. And it's also clear that if those folk had not been there, that would have been a whole nother episode. As a matter of fact, we would have witnessed a murder right there on the scene. Just think about that for a moment because he was clearly outnumbered. And until the cavalry showed up and handled their business, and it highlighted just how cowardly these white boys are. They have no guts, no spine, and they have no cojones. You're looking at a bunch of eunuchs. That's what you're looking at, masquerading as John Wayne types. And when you pull the cover off, you see nothing but eunuchs. Anyhow, the point is this. I'm going to end this silly because I'm not going to be on here long. But one of the brothers used a chair, a folding chair, let me be specific, a folding chair, to whack upside the head of one of the um, people, the perpetrators. And it's interesting to note that that folding chair was created by a black man, an African American, by the name of Nathaniel Alexander. Um, July 7th, 1911, Nathaniel Alexander created the folding chair in Lynchburg, Virginia, and it included a rest and was meant to be used in school and church. So, who would have thought or who would have known that that same folding chair type that Nathaniel Alexander, may he rest in peace, and let us salute him for what he did because he was one of our great black inventors. At any rate, that chair was used as a weapon during this situation. Um, and also, let's give a shout out and a salute to the young brother Aaron Rudolph, who is been hailed as a hero. He's the young man you see in the film swimming in a way that he could hardly wait to get out and get busy, get involved. And he did. This was a man child, to quote George Jackson, who referred to his own brother, Jonathan Jackson, as a man child. Well, that term man child is applicable to Mr. Aaron Rudolph. So we say to you, young blood, we salute you for being heroic and taking a principled stand. And let his example be an inspiration for others of his age range. Um, so this is what I wanted to hop on and say. And lastly, and I'll end it with this. It's interesting how last month there was a great controversy over the country singer Jason Aldean, I think that's how you pronounce his name, about try that in a small town. Well, to those white boys who were acting a fool out there, undoubtedly they had been drinking, but drinking inebriated or sober. Um, you need to understand something. That stuff about try that in a small town, hey, those brothers and sisters said, not today and not here and not ever. That was clear. But I also want to say this finally. Something I haven't heard in a couple of years, and I hope it has been buried, and that is we saw some young people walking around with shirts and memes and stuff on the internet talking about We are not our ancestors. Let me address that real quick. That is something that Dr. Soul Brother takes great umbrage. And I'm going to tell you why. It's rude and disrespectful. As a matter of fact, um, no, I'm going to say it outright. It is rude and it is disrespectful because the insinuation is that I'm better than my ancestors. I don't care what we say. That's what you are insinuating, that you are superior to your ancestors, not understanding that, first of all, you've been conditioned to believe that you are superior to them, and you arrive at that conclusion for all the wrong reasons. Again, there were people back in the day who could not do what you did if this had been 60 years ago or 90 years ago. They could not have done, let's say, okay, this is if they said that was 1933, there's no way they could have done that like that without some repercussions, without some serious um, consequences. None. So, again, those folks who got involved in the movement because they wanted to make change, not just see change, but make change, they're the ones who took the serious hits, the blows, literally, went to jail, and got beaten up. You saw what happened on Edmund Pettus Bridge in same Alabama, Selma, Alabama, nevertheless. Um, and so it's clear that, again, those folk who were out there taking care of business, just know and understand. I don't think this can be stressed enough. You couldn't do those kind of things freely 60, 70, 80, 90 years ago. That's clear. 60 years ago was what? The March on Washington, the bombing of the church. Which, by the way, if you remember, in Malcolm X's message to the grassroots, there was a point in his lecture where he talked about briefly, that wasn't his topic, but he talked briefly about what? How in Birmingham, the brothers and sisters got busy. And he said they were stabbing the crackers in the back and busting them upside the head. Yes, they did. He talked about that. And let's be clear, that happened before the uh, rebellion or yeah, the riots, as they call them, that happened in 64 in Harlem, 65 in Los Angeles, 66 in Chicago, 67 in Detroit and New Jersey. The riot stuff took place, or rebellion rather, took place in Birmingham, Alabama, the South. So the Southerners were getting down before the urban folk outside of the South. Let's be clear. But that's important to know and understand. So in closing, I'll say that this notion about try that in a small town, uh, try that in Montgomery and other places and see what happens. This is an example of what happens when we unify. And we know that you can't stand to see black folk unified. We know that you cannot stand to see that. So we showed them, and I'm very very proud of what they did, and hope it's a lesson that is learned in a situation like that. So I just wanted to hop on here real quick and express my thoughts, congratulations, and salute to all of those who were involved, including that young brother, Aaron Rudolph, 16-year-old man child, who courageously um, went into the water so he could get um, and protect his brother and stand shoulder to shoulder with those who look like him and say, we're not having that today. And I think the message should be loud and clear. We're not having that today. Not only today, we're not having it ever. So you put your hand on one of us, you got to deal with the rest of us. That's the notion. That's the message that was loud and clear. And that wasn't implicit, that was clearly explicit. So this is Dr. Soulbrother signing off. And anybody who's listening, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the comment button. I would love to hear your thoughts. You like, dislike, agree, disagree. Express yourself. Express yourself. Love to hear and any suggestions that you might have. I'm more than happy to listen to those suggestions. So again, salute to those brothers and salute, and we need to protect that young brother. Make sure nothing happens to him. That's the other thing. Because these are some dangerous times we're living in right now. People are not in their right mind. They're totally irrational on off the Richter and totally out of the box. So, this is Dr. Soul Brother signing off. And until next time, God bless.